Pak Iga, we are waiting for Ibu Angie from US consulate because she cannot enter the room, and I already sent the link to Mbak Esti.
All right, since it's already time, we can start now. Great. Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for giving out your time out of your busy schedule to come here. My name is Anissa Nadifa, or you can call me Icha. I am an international relations student here at Erlangga University, and I will be your MC for today. Again, thank you all for coming here today. Today we are going to attend American movie discussion, or AMUSE, to have a discussion or session, our webinar with very impressive speakers with the title, The Representation of Asian Identity in Raya and the Last Dragon Movie, held by Erlangga Global Engagement and USA Consulate General Indonesia and US Embassy Philippines in collaboration with FISIP UNAIR, American Corners Indonesia, American Spaces Philippines, De La Salle University, and University Malaysia Sabah, and Missouri Valley College. Before we continue, the committee would like to remind you all, the participants, to change their name into name_institution so that the committee will be easier to note your presence here. All right, so in today's session, we are going to be discussing the Raya and the Last Dragon movie and regarding its representation in Asian identity. So as you all probably know, since you applied for this after all, the Raya and the Last Dragon is an American computer fantasy adventure film that is produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios. The movie itself has very heavily based on Southeast Asian cultures, which is not many Disney movies actually represents. So later in the session, we will have fun quiz games that will be held on Kahoot and Q&A session. And we will, and a little bit of note, we will give souvenirs to those people who will win the Kahoot quiz and who actively engage in the Q&A sessions. So watch out for that. Also, the committee would like to remind you to fill out the Google form for your attendance that will be given to you during the session. In the G form, you will be required to upload your attendance proof by screenshotting your presence here and upload it. And also, we would like to ask for you to upload your university ID in order for you to get the certificate. So please watch out for that, and please be careful. Okay, to officially open the event, we will have opening remarks from Pak Iman Harimawan, PhD, Director of from Erlangga University Global Engagement. To Pak Iman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Icha. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning and greetings from Universitas Airlangga, Surabaya, Indonesia. First of all, I would like to deliver my gratitude to Ms. Angie Miser, Public Affairs Officer, U.S. Consulate General, Surabaya, Dr. Debbie Olson from Missouri Valley College, USA, Dr. Bruno Lofrick from De La Salle University, Philippines, Ms. Diana Peters from University Malaysia, Sabah, and Dr. Iga Satria Wibawa from Universitas Airlangga, who present at today's event, American Movie Discussion Session, AMUSE, the representation of Asian identity in Raya and the Last Dragon movie. Praise to God Almighty, along with His grace, we are able to attend this program today virtually. I would like to express my gratitude to the U.S. Consulate General Surabaya for the support, and also to the American Corner Universitas Airlangga and American Space from University Malaysia Sabah and De La Salle University for their contribution and efforts in realizing this event. After a series of discussion, we have finally arrived on this day to carry out the long-awaited event. I hope this program could be our first initiative to create another program in the future. I also want to thank all of the participants from various countries who have taken their time to participate in this program. Ladies and gentlemen, movies have been a part of our life. It portrays and represents almost every single part of our life. It has become an art and entertainment that countries to grow along. Since movies become the best choice to accompany us spending time with families or friends, movies also bring meaningful messages and lessons. Through this program, we provide opportunities for those who are interested in watching and understanding movies and its content. This program offers space for you to be able to learn and express your opinions on the representation of Asian identity in a movie, specifically in the Raya and the Last Dragon movie. Hopefully, this program can help us to look at this matter from various perspectives as part of the Asian identity itself. Lastly, this event will not run smoothly without contribution from the committee and participants who made it possible. Once again, I thank you for your kind attention, and I truly hope all of you gain fruitful experience and discussion from this program. Have a good day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Isha.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for the welcoming remarks, Pak Iman. Next, we will have Ms. Angie Miser as the Acting Consul General from the United States Consul General in Surabaya. Bu Angie, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I am Angie, as she said. I am the Public Affairs Officer, so that means the Kepala Humas in Indonesian. And I have to say, I'm so happy to be here. When my team approached me and said, you know, our corner in Unair has this great program on Raya, I was like, please, can I do the opening remarks? And I wanted to do them for a few reasons. The first is that I love that it's a collaboration between the corners in Malaysia and Indonesia and the Philippines. And what's really cool about that is I actually have served in Malaysia, and my portfolio was the American Spaces many years ago. And so it's sort of like a homecoming in that way. It's my current and my past. So maybe Philippines is my future. You never know. So that was one reason that I was really excited to do it. The other is I love this movie. I have two girls who are both under the age of 10. And every Friday, our family has a movie night and we rotate who gets to pick. And my girls almost always choose Raya since it's come out. They both dressed up as Raya for Halloween. This is a movie I have seen so many times and I love it every time. And there's so much in there to take away. You know, there's the story of bravery and friendship. There's a woman who's in the lead, and you see just little bits of culture here and there. And it's so important for our kids to see that variety and that representation. And it doesn't matter what your kid is. You know, my kids are American, their heritage is American. They have grandparents who immigrated to America from India. So they have a different part of Asia, but, you know, for them to see a variety of representation on the screen it's just like, oh, it's normal. You know, Raya happens to be from Southeast Asia. You have, you know, cartoons of people who happen to be from India or Africa or China. It doesn't matter. And that's what's so cool about film now versus film 20, 30 years ago. It was a lot different and a lot more inclusive and a lot more reflective of reality and the globalization and the diversity that we want to be celebrating. That's so important to us as Americans, as Indonesians, as Malaysians, as Filipinos. Like, when we look at the world, it's the diversity and the inclusivity and the representation that we want to pass on and that will make our world stronger. Celebrating that. And this film really does that, not only because it's in Southeast Asia, but you see all the different characters. And I know that the speakers will talk about it, you know, they're from Fang or they're from Talon or wherever. And, you know, they in themselves have these different perceptions and ideas and cultures that they're holding on to, and how they see the commonality and come together, even within the same sort of unit of the dragon. So there's so many layers of this movie. It's great for kids and it's great for grown-ups. It's exactly the kind of thing that we love to celebrate and want to, you know, instill in our children. So I'm very, very happy that everyone is here to talk about this movie, what it means. I'm excited to hear what other people have said about the movie. So I really appreciate the chance to be a part of this. I'm so thrilled that we could help make it happen. And I will stop my remarks there, but thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you very much, Miss Angie, for the warm speech. Now we will move on to the next session, which is the actual discussion that will be moderated by my senior, Andiana Maharani. But before that, we will check out our very own AMUSE trailer and the Raya movies trailer. The floor is yours. Izan?
Some shell. I gotcha. I trained to become a guardian of the Dragon Gem, but this world has changed. And its people are divided. Now, to restore peace, I must name is Raya. You're getting a little too big for this, bud.
Okay, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are right now, because I know the attendees and the participants come from various countries, but my regards to you and thank you for coming once again. My name is Andina Maharani and I'm gonna be today's moderator. I'm a fourth year student of international relations and it's a pleasure for me to be here. I know lots of people, me personally, are very excited to talk more about Raya and to hear more about the movie from the amazing speakers that we have today. As you may have already known, I'm accompanied by 4 amazing speakers today, so it will be quite a packed, but I guarantee very fun discussion. Today we will have Debbie Olsen, PhD from Missouri Valley College. Second, we will have Dr. Bruno Lorfrik from De La Salle University. Third, we will have Diana Peters, MA from University Malaysia Sabah. And last but not least, Satria Wibawa, PhD from Universitas Erlangga. But first, we are going to hear the presentation from Debbie Olsen, PhD from Missouri Valley College. Debbie is an associate professor at Missouri Valley College, and her research interests include images of African-American children in film and television, critical race theory, childhood studies, cultural studies, African film, New Hollywood cinema, and besides being an associate professor, Debbie is also an editor-in-chief of an international journal, a book writer and editor as well. Such an honor to have Debbie here. Hi, Debbie. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for inviting me.
Good.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. We are very excited to hear more from you about Raya, so you may begin the presentation and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Although I was hoping I wouldn't go first. I had never heard of the movie until Satria invited me to speak on this panel. So I was pleasantly surprised. It's a beautiful film. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. I found it an odd film for Disney, however. Normally, Disney films star children. This kind of stars an adult. She starts out as a child and then is an adult. The identity progression in this film I found quite interesting also. And yes, Disney is very slow in the globalization and the diversity. They're getting better, as this film clearly shows. But I think too that Disney is stuck in particular portrayals of cultures that still kind of border on stereotypes. As I was watching this film, I was struck by the violence that the girls do, particularly the fight scene between Raya and Namari, I thought was very reminiscent of Jaden Smith's role in the remake of, the name has escaped me, where he's the child in China and fights, where the camera kind of fetishizes the injuries and the pain that the character goes through. I think the violence was interesting because the only 2 films that have women characters that fight are Mulan and Raya. And I find that interesting because both of these films are Asian themed, right? The other 2, Moana, which I haven't seen, so I don't think there's any fight scenes that Moana does in that film. Jasmine in Princess and the Frog outwits people. I don't think there's any fight scenes in that either. And then, of course, Jasmine in Aladdin doesn't fight either. So I thought that this focus on kind of martial arts which culturally, comes from the Asian tradition. But I thought that was a little bit interesting that the film focused so much on violence as the way to solve and get ahead. Even at the end, they're being attacked. And the very last scene where they all kind of turn into stone is the one moment where they unite. And I thought that was interesting also because they unite in death in a way, right? Until the stone or the gem flashes and all of the Droon are dead. Another thing that struck me too, and this is kind of a thing I focus on anyway, is the notion of innocence. And of course, Disney's the purveyor of childhood innocence everywhere around the world. They've kind of cornered the market on the innocence portrayal, but this film seems to have an odd relationship with innocence, because innocence in this film tends to get you in trouble. And to me, it goes kind of counter to the theme of trust. So we have the con baby, which I thought was a great character. And I love it's con baby. I'm going to use that as a admonition to my dogs now. But I mean, you can't get any more innocent than a baby. And so we have a baby who then you expect to be innocent and turns out to be completely not. Raya, who begins innocent and then is betrayed by Namaari and doesn't trust, and Namaari isn't innocent really at all until the end, I think. It seems like the film is asking the characters to blindly trust no matter how often you are hurt, which is an interesting message I find in a Disney film. And it's paradoxical because innocence is met with pain and betrayal in this film, right? So it's this strange kind of mixture. Although in the end, to blindly trust no matter how much you hurt is rewarded, right? Because then the one character who is portrayed as kind of evil, I say evil loosely, she's not really evil, she's the, antagonist. In the end, miraculously, decides to sacrifice herself and save everyone. As she starts up that hill towards the light, right, with the stone, she changes her mind and goes back. And so, it's all resolved in the end. And it's like she returns to a state of innocence in the fact that she's decided to not be selfish, but to sacrifice herself also with the other characters. I find that very interesting, that the movement is not to achieve innocence or keep innocence, but rather to sacrifice innocence in a way. And I found that a bit interesting. The depiction of Asian cultures, and I read a bit of interviews of the director and the two screenwriters, Keen Wen and Lim is the last name. And they purposely created a land that was not any one country. So they purposely kind of cherry picked things in culture, which I thought was beautiful. I think the scenes in the cities are absolutely gorgeous. The landscape, I think, also was well done. I love Tuk Tuk. I'm sorry, he's my favorite. I absolutely love Tuk Tuk. I love that she rides him like that and it rolls, and it's just very fun. I imagine that to be a hot Christmas item. Some scholars, though, that I read that kind of commented on this film were bothered by the kind of cherry picking of the different Southeast Asian cultures, and kind of claimed that bordered on stereotypes because they're picking things people would recognize as Southeast Asian, which would of course tend to be a little bit stereotypical. But you have to start somewhere. right, with representation, and to introduce to the world, you know, cultures that some people are not familiar with. This is a beautiful way to do it in this film, the way they did it. I don't know if anyone else looked, this film on its opening day grossed $8 million. It made 54 million in opening weekend, and worldwide it has grossed 130 million. So it's done really well. It's a very popular film. And let's see, what other notes did I take? I think I'll stop there and I'll see what the others have to say, and we can kind of bounce ideas back and forth, if that's all right. Those are my comments on this film so far.
Yeah, I think some of your points are actually very interesting, especially when you highlighting the innocence, the portrayal of innocence, especially in parallel with other Disney movies, other Disney princess movies, where the other Disney princess movies like Cinderella, for example, they exploit heavily on innocence as the strength of the main characters, where in Raya, this kind of being portrayed sometimes as their fallout and their weakness as well. But yeah, we will hear more about this from other speakers as well. Next up, we will have Mr. Satria Wibawa from Universitas Erlangga. Mr. Satria Wibawa is, or also known as IGA, is the lecturer from Communication Department of the Faculty of Social and Political Science of Universitas Erlangga. IGA specialized in film, journalism, creative visual, and children representation in Indonesian cinema. And besides being an academic, Satria is also actively pioneering internationalization activities in Universitas Erlangga, as well as education and cultural matters nationwide. So, Mr. Satria Wibawa, are you there?
Yes, sorry. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you,
Glad
Diana.
to have you here. Okay.
Thank
you
you,
may
Rani.
have the presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Rani. Thank you, Debbie. Such interesting presentation as well. I'm trying to give my perspective on these films. I watched this film 3 times. The first time is kind of this is still my point. My bottom line is it's enjoyable, entertaining movie, just like another Disney films. I love it. But when I have to watch it and the second and 3 times, this is the way I treat this film as a critical product media. So yeah, let me do the share screen plus. Yeah, as an entertainment product, Raya is very entertaining, and I love it. Just like like other Disney films, and we understand and we already aware that Disney has reputation to create a film that present a family as well as in critical ways contain some controversial, if I say, because well, Debbie has a long record on studying on Disney films, and also Henry Jenkins also saying about Disney movies construct like a dominant representation on specific ethnicities or families. I think most of us are very well aware about how Disney present family figures in screen, how we know about a princess and princesses, and all the like good images on the family. But also we should remember, when we should, if in academic perspective, we should also aware that some criticism about how Disney movies kind of mislead the audience to different way. For example, we have an accusation of racism in Aladdin, if you remember that, and then also about still depiction of Moana, the recent one, and also a long discussion about Native American in Pocahontas, and also discussion about a misrepresentation of indigenous people in Peter Pan. But still, we watch Raya as a movie, and then discourse is about the film is about is Raya is represent Southeast Asia, and all of us here, well, most of us here is from Southeast Asia country. So my question is in this presentation, is it Raya is Southeast Asia or Asia or what? And I'm trying to bring this discussion in my presentation. Basically, as another Disney movie, Raya is following the plot of American Story. You know, it's like very much like present like typical narrative in Hollywood, classic Hollywood, a family tragedy, and then must set Raya destination to save the world and things. But the interesting part is this story is bring the heavy inspiration from Southeast Asian culture, and it is true. I mean, we heard about tuk-tuk. You know, tuk-tuk is the public transportation in Thailand, and also Raya is the name from, you know, like in South Asian, Southeast Asian. We know Hari Raya. We, you know, a lot of things related with Raya word. So Raya claims to draw heavy inspiration from South Asian culture in this step. So Southeast Asian culture supposed to go should tell us a lot of the diversities within the region, because Southeast Asian country is not a country, it's a region. We have many countries in the region, and we are talking about at least 10 different countries with its own uniqueness. You know, like language, we spoke in different language. Even Indonesia and Malaysia, which has a lot of similarities, we still have kind of different languages. Habit, culture, of course, fashions, food, and all the things that we live in our everyday life, and also dialect, accents, and the one is so visual, perhaps skin colors, hairs. Even though some of my Australian friends thought I'm a Malaysian because I speak Malay or Indonesia, you know, but still we are different. We are so diverse. So my question is Southeast Asian cultures are truly being reflected in this film? So, and if we read some review of this film, they critics on how a very few actors of South Asian descent involved in this film, even though the writer is from Malaysia, Kelly is Vietnamese, the one who voices Raya, but some other characters is not, you know, we're talking about the Southeast Asian, it's not really South Asian native. So the diversities in a way is kind of different with the way they represent the narrative in the way they produce the films. And sorry. So when I watched the film, I put myself as Southeast Asian. So I'm talking about where am I? I mean, as an Indonesian, if the film has been advertised as animated film that promote and encompassing vision of Asian diversity or Southeast Asian diversity, such as casting choices and then, but still, I hardly see myself represented in this film. I mean, yes, this is South Asian films, but as an Indonesian, I'm trying to see where am I in this film. Do I represented by Raya? Of course not. Or tuk-tuk is names from Thailand. So it seems a film that sought to ensure my culture stories as well as other Southeastern Asian. I felt that somehow, in some degrees, I'm not being fully represented and rather being assimilated into a stereotype that consider is a holistically Asian or either Southeast Asian is kind of has each own identities here with and we can like make it differences with other region. So the question continue and remain until, in my perspective, perhaps Southeastern Asian cultures like other cultures around the world are incredibly different and diverse. So therefore, we should acknowledge these differences. So in one way, instead of championing one specific Southeastern Asian country or nation, or rather blurring the lines between my different with maybe Diana or maybe my friends from Malaysia or the Philippines, I think this film trying to, in a way, diminishing the uniqueness of each country of in Southeast Asia. For example, I couldn't find any, like Indonesia in specific except for Chris in there, and some fighting scene like reminds me to Meranto film or The Raid, for example, using the bamboo stick, but I realized this as a fiction narrative. This is kind of the issue of Disney lack of specificity on Southeast Asian representation. It's kind of different when we watch like Brave is so Scottish, or Beauty and the Beast is kind of, we represent, the film represent France or European country. Even Frozen, the one who so popular, is kind of we understand this is kind of the Scandinavian region in Norway. So I understand that Raya is a fictional film. However, the celebration of Southeast Asian representative in critical way is sound a little bit too naive. So, and then, homogenizing is kind of too strong for this film. But however, I'm trying to see the film from different perspective. So, by blending all the cultures, all the elements of Southeast Asian countries, but in a way, I feel like this is the narrative kind of trying to homogenizing the diversity of Southeast Asian countries. So we mix everything. The film mix everything. The film mix all the blended elements and developing a new characters that might be represent some of the Southeast Asian countries. And then I take myself into the comfort zone. If the film truly representing South Asian countries, then I will try to find elements that help me to understand how Raya claims its element rise up and indicates of the Southeast Asian identity. The first, of course, the question about who is Raya. Raya is I will say from Southeast Asian countries, not from like Philippines, not from Thailand, not from Vietnam, or not from Indonesia. So that question becoming the bigger question because race is a social construction, but also kind of trying to put the diversity in that race becoming new kind of race together. It's a Southeast Asian. So this is the problem. Southeast Asian is so diverse. We can't like put on the same plate every culture, every country, and saying, "Oh, this is Southeast Asian." So despite the similarities we have, the closest one perhaps Indonesia with Malaysia, or with the Timor-Leste, for example, or some region of some province in Indonesia with Philippines, we should consider the diversity in a way. We can't be narrowed down into one particular figures. So then this is what I say, why I take word homogenizing in this Hollywood remains. And then the second question is, where is Raya? Of course, this is fictional. Kumanja is nowhere. I mean, this is kind of a fictional place that has a Southeast Asian cultures or elements. But when I saw the setting and the landscape, I feel like, oh, I saw Mad Max there. Oh, it's just like Star Wars, the desert and thing. And I understand, and then I read also in the review as well, Raya and the Last Dragon went for what we call pan-regional strategy, which means Kumanja is not based on specific countries of East Asia, but rather draws from many of distinct cultures of the region to create a new fictional world. So like a floating market, mountain landscape, Asian-based architectural. So that's kind of similarity we can find in some Southeast Asian countries. So this is raising up similar issues for me. Like we do have kind of uniqueness on each countries in Southeast Asia. So if the South Asian IC is blended into Kumanja, then what is the cultural background of Raya? We're talking about the dragon, for example, Naga. I have to admit, Naga is related with many South Asian countries or culture, such as Thailand or even Indonesia. But we should also aware a strong image of dragon or Naga is belong culturally to China, or at least a Chinese ethnics that spread out in some South Asian countries. Culturally, Naga might have like kind of few significant position culturally in some countries. Let's say Malaysia, Indonesia, Timor-Leste, or maybe Philippines. Maybe Bruno can correct me if I'm wrong later on. And then, but still, yeah, as I said in the beginning, these elements put it together and put a name as the Southeast Asian cultures. So, or maybe Debbie also mentioned in the beginning about the martial arts. So, the martial arts system here is blended from a variety of South Asian country martial arts culture. We have Pencak Silat here, we have Muay Thai, and also I read it, it's Arnis. This is new thing for me as well. Thank you. But in this some fighting scene, for example, the way we see in the trailer, we see the fighting scene with the bamboo stick. It reminds me with the classically the bamboo stick fighting is also been used in some Indonesian classic movies, martial arts, like in the past, like 20 years ago. We know Barry Prima or Arvin Bangun. If our Indonesian student doesn't recognize this name, we have so gap in the years. We have a tradition of Indonesian martial arts, and they're using bamboo stick fighting. Recently, we have Maranto. It also draws on fighting scene with bamboo stick, and also the Raid, if you watch the Raid as well. If this is kind of the South Asian country based on the martial arts, yes, this is very heavily rely on South Asian country. And then so one for sure, Raya and the Last Dragon features a wide range of South Asian, the food and things, and the names, all the TikTok names. That might be the most South Asian culture I see in this film very clearly. We saw, the thing that we couldn't find in a region like longan, mangosteen, and durian, for example. Maybe they should try it later on durian, so understand the taste of really Southeast Asian culture here. And however, as an entertainment, Raya is very entertaining, and of course, it's start of acknowledgement of South Asian regions, despite for its lack of South Asian representation for me. For example, in its cast, which mostly feature voice actor of is not South Asian descent. but also this kind of the way of pan-regional representation is very common in Hollywood, which tends to conflate communities of color-based or perceived shared distance to another cultures, rather than any similarities their cultures may or may not have to one another. But also, this is true, Raya and The Last Dragon, for me, also drew from the cultures of most of the South Asian countries to tell the story. However, you should remember that Southeast Asia has a population of over 700 million, is almost 10% of the global population, and also with very so diverse and distinct cultures. Raya and The Last Dragon perhaps represent some cultures of a South Asian country, but also kind of problematic because most likely undercut the emotional effectiveness of the story for some viewers because they feel like not really represented as a Southeast Asianers in this film. So yeah, thank you. I hope we can have discussion later on, and I'll give it back time to you, Rani. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Satria, for the presentation. Again, it's such an interesting presentation because you resonate on some points made by Debbie earlier, especially on the violence, the martial art portrayal, how it was so violent, and how Disney tend to highlights violence in Asian movies. But the more interesting point is also the nitpicking or the cherry picking approach used by Western movie makers in this context, and how the approach used by the Raya movie is pan-regional strategy. Then if that is the strategy, then culturally we can ask who is Raya, or rather who does she actually represent, which is a very good question we might explore later. But before we dive further in analyzing the correlation between Asian identity, inclusive representation, the Raya movie, and how it might or might not be problematic, we will have a short break because we know how heavy it can be to digest all of this information from four insightful speakers at once. So to relax a bit, we will have a short game, and afterwards we will proceed with our next third and fourth speakers. So do not leave yet, wait up, and thus let me return the stage back temporarily to Ms. Icha, our host. Icha, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Marani, for the impressive speakers and also the moderating sessions of the discussions earlier of our two speakers. Okay. Now, maybe before we continue to the game session, we would probably like to play the trailer of the movie for the second part, for you to relax for a bit and watch a little bit of Raya, so that you can probably remind yourself all of these different aspects that have mentioned earlier from Miss Debbie and Mr. Iga. Okay. Izan, please play the second trailer.
Remember what we're looking for, and don't trust anyone. Whoa, what? Hey, baby. Where are your parents? Hey, who's baby? What? Really? A con baby? Impressive. We could use someone like you. Let's catch you up. My name is Raya. Our lands have been at war for as long as we can remember. Our people never see eye to eye.
My daughter, I believe our people can come together again, but someone has to take the first step.
Now, in order to restore peace, we must find the last dragon.
I wish to join this fellowship of butt kickery.
Let's go. We'll have to watch our backs. We're not the only ones looking. 6 years of searching. Please let this be it. Oh, mighty Sisu!
Who said that?
We really need your help.
I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not like the best dragon. Have you ever done like a group project, but there's like that one kid who didn't pitch in as much, but still ended up with the same grade?
We're doomed.
You and the dragon are coming with me.
My sword here says we're not. The world's broken. You can't trust anyone.
Maybe it's broken because you don't trust anyone. You just have to take the first step. I just shape changed.
Dragons can do that?
Look how close my butt is to my head. It's gonna make digestion so much faster.
In theaters or ordered on Disney Plus with Premier Access, March 5th.
Okay, thank you very much for the trailer. All right, everyone. That was we can practically see the informative information from the session from Miss Debbie and Mr. Iga that has been mentioned before, and we can actually see in this trailer the representations and the points have been that has been made. Now, for the next session. Also, thank you very much for Miss Debbie and Mr. Iga for their insight. And now for the next session is our very own Kahoot quiz session. So please get your app or a new tab ready on your browser and enter the code I have sent in the chat box. To play, we highly encourage you to play, and please use your real name and also underscore institution if it's possible. So real name and underscore institution if it's possible. And we highly encourage you to play since we will be giving away souvenirs to the ones who win this Kahoot quiz and active in the session in the Q&A session later today. So again, please use your real name and not funny meme names for the Kahoot quiz, or use your bias name or anything. Anime names, no, please. Your real name for in order for you to get your reward or the souvenir. All right, everyone. The code is 203833. We highly encourage you to join the game. Yes, you can also use your shortened name of your institution. Your first name and your and underscore your shortened name of your institution. All right, since we have 210 participants, we will wait until how many join, Barani?
Maybe, wait, okay, so 60 people are joining right now, maybe
Yeah.
70?
Or 100. Let's see. Okay, 70. It's already 70. Let's wait for a while for the other people to participants to join. The quiz is not really that hard. If you have watched Raya first before attending the session, it's actually really heavily based on that. Okay, I think we can start. Wait. Is there? Okay. Yeah, I think we can start now, right, Barani?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Izan, please start the Kahoot quiz. Yeah. Okay. So the first question in the quiz is, what animal appears as the god in this movie? Come on, it's right there. Okay. It's a bit okay. Dragon. Oh, FJ is leading. Please. Okay, quiz. The second name Wu is the name of the blue dragon of Raya's friend.
I think the answer is kind of giving a hint already.
Yeah.
The options.
Okay. Wow, there's still people who got wrong. Okay. Maybe they forgot of the name of the dragon and confuse it with something else. Okay, next. Okay, true or false? Kumanja is the name of the prosperous land in the movie. We have already discussed it with our previous speakers earlier. It would be yes. All right. Congratulations for the ones who got it right. Next. It's a bit laggy, right? Okay. So very sorry for that. Okay. True or false, Kumanja has 4 tribes. It is heavily based on Kumanja and the dividers. Okay. The answer is false. Which has many tribes. I also forgot.
Representing the dragon-shaped river.
Yeah, what tribe does Raya belong to? It's actually shown there a little bit. All right, congratulations for the 45 people who got it correct, which is the tribe that Raya belongs to is Heart. Okay, Matt from DLSU is leading right now. Okay, what tribe name symbolizes the placement of each tribe birth in the dragon-shaped river? Is it false or true? It's actually shown there in the picture. Oh, yes.
And I have spoiled the answer.
Yeah, it's a little bit spoiling the answer there, but it's all right. Okay, Alyssa is leading now. Okay, true or false? Raya is the Disney first Southeast Asian princess. Is she technically a princess though? She's a guardian.
I think she is because his father is like the leader of the tribes.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah. Yes, it's true. It is Disney's first Southeast Asian princess. Okay, Damar from FISIP UNAIR is leading. Next. Okay, 8 question out of 15. Which of these is not the name of the tribe along the river? We have seen the pictures before, right? The spoiling picture. I'm sure you're accustomed to it by now. Okay. Yes, the kidney one is wrong. Okay. Next, Tamar is still reading. Next. True or false? Sisu is based on a legendary dragon called Naga from Asian myth. True or false? Yes, it's true, which is Naga is actually a translation from dragon. Dragon is a translation to Malaysian or Indonesian language Naga, but I'm not sure if it's heavily based on Southeast Asian culture and our Southeast Asian folklore. But yes, it exists in our language Naga. Next. What is the dragon gem? It's a very important thing. A gemstone that can see the future, a precious stone made from dragon scales, a gem made from dragon's eye, a gem Raya is tasked with guarding. The trailer earlier actually spoils it. Yes. Yes, that's true. A gem that is Raya tasked with to guard. Next. Okay, Damar is still leading. Tuk-tuk, Raya's pet, is actually the name of the vehicle that can be found in Mr. Iga has already said that before in the previous session. Actually, Tuk-tuk is very cute. He's my favorite character out of the whole movie.
Tuk-tuk is everyone's favorite.
Yeah, it reminds me of my cats.
Should be titled Tuk-tuk and the Last Dragon.
Yeah. Okay, Thailand. Yes, that is true. It's the name of a vehicle that is very similar to Bajai here in Indonesia. Okay, Damar is still leading. Next, true or false? Carrie Marie Tran, Raya voiceover actress, is a Vietnamese American actress. True or false? Well, you can actually see the picture there. She's wearing traditionally based dress.
But Mrs. Satria has also spoiled the answer previously.
Yeah.
Presentation. Yes, true.
Yes, that is true. Okay, Damar is still leading. Okay, multi-select. Which Southeast Asian martial arts are represented in this movie? Mr. Iga has also mentioned this earlier. That is true. Muay Thai, Pencaksilat, and Arnis are the ones represented in this movie. Next. Okay, Hanif is rising through. Next. True or false? One of Raya's weapon is Kris. It's actually there. Kris is actually a sword or not? Actually, it's a dagger, right?
It's a dagger.
Yeah, it's a dagger. It's not actually a sword, but they made it a sword, so. Yes, that is true. Quiz. What does Raya mean in Bahasa Indonesia or Bahasa Melayu? Raya, something with we have already spoiled it earlier by Mas Iga or Mr. Iga. All right, it means great or celebration or celebrate. Okay, thank you so much for participating, anyone. For the third place, we have Miss Aksanti from UNAIR and Hanif, and also, who's the first place? Damar from FISIP UNAIR. Thank you very much for the three winners. The three winners may contact us in our email regarding by sending them their contact info for us to be able to process your souvenirs. Okay. All right. Thank you again so much for participating, everyone, and congratulations to the participants who won the game. For the winners, please send an email again with your contact info so that we can process your souvenirs. Again, thank you so much. Now back to our moderator for the next session.
Okay, thank you, Icha, and thank you, the team, for the games. It was fun indeed, and I hope everyone had fun, and I hope everyone is amped up and ready to proceed with our discussion. Because yes, we're not done yet. Next up, we have Diana Peters, MA from University Sabah, Malaysia. Diana Peters is a senior lecturer of the international program at the Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, University Malaysia Sabah. She obtained her first degree in political science from Case Western University, Ohio, before pursuing her master's degree at University Kebangsaan Malaysia. And her research area covers security issues in Sabah, particularly undocumented or irregular migrants. And she has co-authored several articles as well as co-edited a book and is currently involved in a research project on irregular migrants in Sabah. Hi, Diana, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, it's an honor to have you. We are very interested in hearing your take on the Raya movie, so you may begin your presentation and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, I hope my voice comes out loud and clear. We have some technical issues as well regarding internet connection, and my chair is kind of squeaky, so it may give out some sound effects throughout my presentation. As with the other presenters, Raya, I found Raya very entertaining. I actually watched it with my kids as well, and having two daughters, they were insisted that I see Raya multiple times because once was not enough for them. And this is considered an opportunity for me when Lincoln Library UMS contacted me and asked me if I wanted to share my views on the movie. One thing that struck me as Debbie started her presentation just now was her take on Raya being showcasing violence and innocence throughout the movie. And she was surprised that Disney would feature such an element in this once epic film, I must say. But then Disney has always been known for this portrayal of, how do I say, most of Disney's portrayal, I mean, looking back at all the movies, it's always been either an orphan child or a child that has lost one parent. So Disney is all about drama, and Disney likes to showcase how this child or this girl or this boy rise up to the occasion and tries to overcome the situation. One thing I did found interesting about Raya was that Raya was probably one of the first movies that the sidekick was not a guy. Most of the other Disney movies, it was mostly damsels in distress. Even Moana had her own dragon to help her out. So in this sense, Raya and Moana was probably the same. So my take on this movie, as we all know, Raya was heavily marketed. It was praised as a historic representation for Southeast Asia. It was written by two Southeast Asian writers. The lead was a first Southeast Asian actress as well, be it she was Asian American, and it delivered. The visuals were stunning, it was animating, it was endearing, it was engaging, funny, well written. There was many things that we could take away from this movie. There was a lot of similarities that I could pick out, things that were very common to me as a Southeast Asian person, characters were draped in sabai tops, sambot pants. There was kris being wielded about, martial arts, as the quiz incorporated just now, martial arts from Silat, Muay Thai, architectures. You could see Angkor Wat, you could see the water markets of Bangkok, bamboo forest, things from an international relations perspective and from a student learning history, things that would have been familiar to many of my students and to me as well. More layman-wise, there was a lot of food and animals that we shared in common. There was like lots of durians and dragon fruit being thrown about. We also shared the same animal in the monkeys, the macaws. These bandits are also prevalent in many tourist attractions in Malaysia, as with those portrayed in the film as well, where they would steal people's belongings and make a dash for it. The food is something that we're all familiar with, the tom yum, the rice, and everything else. One of the main critics, when I was looking over what were the main critics or criticisms for Raya the movie, one obviously was touched upon by the two presenters, which was the lack of representation. But this, they were talking in terms of vocal actors. Why was it East Asian actors portraying a Southeast Asian setting? We understand that Asians in general are heavily underrepresented in film and in any kind of industry. But at this one point where Raya could have made a difference in showcasing more Southeast Asian individuals and voices, it was a shame that they could not find any of these local celebrities within our own region to voice main characters of in Raya itself. The second thing was the one that was also touched by the other presenters, in that they seem to have this all Asians are the same theme running throughout the movie, in a sense that we could not pick out which tribe represented which actual ethnicity here in Southeast Asia. And because people couldn't tell Asians apart because of the background, so this only served to reinforce this common monolith expression that Asians are the same wherever we go. I mean, the normal thing is, oh, you're from Asia, you must be from East Asia. Southeast Asian usually seldom figures into the normal identification of being an Asian. It was always either you were Japanese, you were Korean, or you were Chinese. So this was one of the criticisms and the drawbacks, I suppose, from this movie. As I said, or as the moderator listed just now, I teach international relations, and I have used movies in my classes purely for the purpose of either identifying concepts or for using to explain historical events, to explain the uses of issues, and also for culture. In this instance, or in this movie, what I can see is culture being heavily portrayed in Raya, in terms of the construct being around Asianism and identity. And I guess one of the things that struck me was Raya tried to portray Southeast Asia as a region that was unified, that everybody collaborated with each other, and they did everything for the greater good. Ironically, many of the comments were more into trying to figure out which individual country would best depict Kumanja or any of the region. And I found that ironic because we're moving into a time where collaboration and unity is something that we should strive for. And yet the thing that we are focusing on is, shouldn't it be more Malaysian and Indonesian rather than just an all-encompassing team? So that was one of the things that I found ironic throughout this discussion. One thing that I liked also about this movie is its strong female leaders. As I said before, unlike many of the other Disney movies, female characters have not been given that kind of spotlight in which they are able to hold their own. And with Raya and her arch nemesis, they were able to actually carry this movie forward without having that significant male actor being attached to them. So that was something that was very interesting and also great for me. And lastly is the concept about trust, good faith, and also collaboration. And I think this is, for international relations students, this is essential because our Southeast Asian region is represented by ASEAN as an international grouping. And within ASEAN, what we try to portray is that although we are different countries, we are united for the same cause, in that we want to achieve a more stable environment for all of us to prosper. And we want to be able to collaborate with all our neighbors. So for me, as a first movie about Southeast Asia, I was not particularly upset of not being individually represented, meaning Malaysia wasn't individually represented in the movie. I was not particularly upset. I was thankful that there was an attempt from Disney to showcase the uniqueness of the region. And perhaps after this, more interest will be piqued. And there will be more investigation, or there may be more documentaries or movies specifically about our region. And probably it's then that they would go more individually, focusing on each countries that are within our region. But basically, yes, that is my take on the movie. And I'll return this to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana, for your take on the movie. It's interesting, actually, because I'm personally an international relations student, and you mentioned about how the Kumanja dynamic is very heavily competitive, but also on the other hand, there's the depiction of value of trust and good faith and how you correlate it to ASEAN. But we can also argue that the Kumanja dynamic is also a reflection of the ASEAN dynamic itself, because we know even though ASEAN heavily promotes good value and trust within each other, but we also know how the countries often debate with each other diplomatically. But in the end of the day, they are still neighbors, which is interesting. And your take on how you are more grateful on the representation by Disney, which is interesting because if the other speakers tend to criticize the movie, we now have another perspective on how the Raya Disney movie is actually a gate opener on more inclusive representation in terms of Southeast Asian cultures. Very interesting. We will now move on to the last speakers, but obviously not the least. We will have Mr. Bruno Lovric. Hi, Mr. Bruno. Thank you for being here.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hi. Thank you. Yes, you're very audible. So Dr. Bruno Lovric is an associate professor at De La Salle University Department of Communications, and his research interests include mediation of cultural identity, film studies, popular entertainment, and consumerism. He has co-authored and peer-reviewed several articles involving the issues of Asian soft power, Hallyu culture, and entertainment. And as a scholar, Lovric actively engaged with film and media studies research areas of popular culture and fan studies. So that's a very interesting profile, and we will give the floor to you for your take on the movie.
Since I am the last one in today's presentation, I might be repeating some of the information that other speakers have touched upon, so I apologize for that in advance. Like Maharani said, my research interests are film, and specifically, I look at the film from the perspective of Orientalism. And when I talk about Orientalism, many of my friends tend to get a little bit defensive because they feel like I'm attacking them and trying to take away their joy from the film. But I just want to assure everybody that even though in today's talk, I will be drawing some parallels between this film and some hegemonic Orientalist tendencies from the past, I don't want to take away anybody's enjoyment. In fact, I've very much enjoyed action of Raya myself. I think it's a very colorful, exciting film. It has a really interesting narrative that celebrates female empowerment. And I think that considering the history of Disney and its portrayal of princesses, that's something positive. I also think that it's fantastic that we have a Disney feature that tries to better understand Southeast Asia and representation. The film, of course, is not concerned with perpetuating any kinds of Orientalist stereotype, but instead it's about a princess who has a lot of faith in goodness of other people. And even though this faith is sometimes not rewarded, she tries to remain positive. She's basically exploring this imaginary place that's called Kumanja, that according to the authors is inspired by Southeast Asia. And we see that in depiction of characters, clothing, foods. We see a lot of shrimp congee, floating markets and things like that. So that's why we associate it with Southeast Asia. Raya is also is accompanied by Sisu, who is a shape-shifting dragon, who in Disney version is very much resembling My Little Pony creature. It doesn't really look like dragons that you would see in any of the temples in Asia, but instead it's very colorful, very fluffy, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. And the job of Raya in this film is to travel the land and collect these scattered pieces of the magical stone. Now, one thing that stands out when you look at Raya is like Professor Satrias had said, it really lacks specificity. You cannot associate Raya with any particular country. And I also rewatched it a couple of times, and I had a feeling that the way Southeast Asia was represented is very much reminiscent of the way that restaurants in the West approach ethnic food. So you have these ethnic buffets. For example, you have a Chinese buffet, and then you go in and you have all of these very sweet foods that have exotic sounding names, but these foods do not really have anything to do with China. When you compare to what the Chinese people are eating and what Western people are eating, these are completely different foods. Yet people eating at these ethnic restaurants would feel like they're getting to know the culture better and understanding it better. So in a sense, you are creating a false sense of knowledge, a false familiarity. And I think that this kind of approach where you pick and choose different elements of these very different cultures. I mean, Professor Satria has said that we're talking about more than 10 countries. So we're talking about different languages. We're talking about different histories. We're talking about different architecture. All of these very diverse cultural elements are merged together without any context, without any consideration of where these ideas come from, and they are presented to global audiences as something that's authentic, something that's bringing them in closer contact with these cultures. Of course, by setting this narrative within the imaginary world, you can argue that authors don't really owe anybody to give accurate representation or context. But then the question arises, in what way are they helping Southeast Asian cultures? What are they really, what is Disney teaching us that we didn't know? How is it breaking away from stereotypes? The reason why we associated with Asia, specifically Southeast Asia, is, like I mentioned, we see these jungle temples, we see elements, but the way these elements of these very different cultures are merged together encourages romanticizing and fetishization of these cultural elements without even minimal attempt to understand them. And this idea is very much associated with Orientalism. Orientalism is a concept that was developed by a Palestinian, Edward Said, in his book Orientalism from 1979. And the main impetus for writing Orientalism was that Said was living in the UK, and he has noticed that the way Europeans represented his culture has nothing to do with the way that he has seen his culture. It seemed like a magical, mystical place, but it was a place that allegedly represented him, but really it was a foreign construct to him. And so Said has said that Western portrayal of Middle Eastern and East Asian cultures frames them as unchanging, focused on the past and underdeveloped, which manufactures a deceivingly simplistic view of Oriental culture that can be studied, depicted, and controlled. And implicit in this view is a view that Western society is more developed, superior, rational, flexible, and by defining the whole East as its less developed or exoticized version, the West is basically affirming its own dominance. And this film is not really exception to the rule. It really affirms this approach that Disney has had in the past, where cultures that are not Western are looked down upon as pre-modern, exotic, unchanging, mystical, feminine, etc. So you wouldn't have this same kind of treatment where you merge different cultures if we were talking about cultures of Europe. You wouldn't mix Scotland with Italy. You wouldn't mix Germany with Spain. That's just something that wouldn't work because most of the Western audiences would notice this discrepancy and react to it. But in case of Southeast Asia, this is considered appropriate approach. Also, Disney in its representations of cultures tends to merge these cultures together. So when you look at Moana, which is set in Polynesian islands, or when you look at Coco, which is set in Mexico, we're looking at different cultures, and it seems like Disney is trying to preserve their uniqueness, but it somehow, everything turns into these very cute characters that are palatable to global audiences and which are very suitable for commodification within Disney's theme parks. So for example, one of the features that stands out in Raya is this image of dragon. In Asian cultures, dragons are seen as bringers of good luck, fortune, but visually they tend to be very formidable. They have these big teeth, they have sharp claws, but when Disney takes dragons, it basically turns them into these fluffy toys that, like I said already, they can be really easily commodified and sold as a toy within the theme park. When one of the first scenes that you see in Raya is this very hostile desert landscape. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't associate Southeast Asia with deserts. I mean, I know of one in Vietnam, but it's not a landmass that has many deserts. Yet where deserts do appear frequently is Orientalist works. Deserts tend to represent hidden danger, mysticism, and you will see them in films such as Aladdin and Mulan, and they tend to be featured very prominently. So this feeds into Western imagination that Orient is this land where you can expect anything to happen, where the people and places are less suitable for life than they are in the West. Now, I don't know about you, does this look like something that you would see in Southeast Asia? To me, it doesn't. To me, it looks like a Viking village. But again, when you set a world inside of this fantasy land, you have all kinds of justifications to pick and choose. But I don't think that this in any way represents Southeast Asia, and children watching this cartoon will feel like they are closer to Southeast Asia without really getting any significant information about it. Also, these scenes that you see on your screen, to me, they look like they could be in Lara Croft. They're full of action. You have these fights that look like they could be from a Hong Kong movie or a karate movie. You have these very exciting wuxia sequences. Wuxia is associated with Chinese films, and so again, we're just putting a bunch of stuff together that looks kind of exciting visually, but we're not learning much about either Raya or Southeast Asia. So this is very common in wuxia films. You have these sequences where people are fighting and then camera slows down and then you see them from different angles. They're like floating and fighting each other. Another thing that stands out to me are eyes. In Disney films, eyes and generally features do not tend to be anatomically correct. Yet in Raya and Mulan, we see that good characters always have these big eyes, and all of the evil characters, they tend to have these kind of slanted eyes. And I just think that that's a really interesting choice by the authors, and that this kind of thing keeps getting repeated, even though we know that people in Asia have different eyes. Some have bigger eyes, some have smaller, but smaller eyes are stereotypically associated with Asia, and authors chose to really zoom in on that and give smaller eyes to the bad guys. Cherry blossoms, I mean, you have them in different parts of Asia, but typically you would associate them more with Japan, with East Asia. You wouldn't necessarily associate cherry blossom with Southeast Asia. Then you have this capital that has these golden domes. To me, they look like something you would also see in Aladdin. These kinds of Oriental features, it doesn't necessarily look like something that you would see in Southeast Asia. But again, the main concern of the authors, in my opinion, is to create this exotic place that's going to titillate global capitalist imagination, rather than tell a story that encourages you to ponder deeper into cultures that the film is inspired with. At the same time, we do see lots of elements in the film that we can associate with specific places. For example, the clothing that characters wear. You can see these collars that resemble Changshan collar. You see this sash. They are recognizably Southeast Asian, but the problem is that they are not associated with any country in particular. They're taken out of the context. Can anybody tell me, are these real letters here?
So
Are these
I think don't. I think they're not real Southeast Asian alphabets.
Right, so that's what I thought, but I wanted to be 100% sure. Similar thing happened in Mulan, where she receives a letter. And when you zoom in on the letter, you see some Chinese characters, but letters are really gibberish. They don't mean anything. And so the authors didn't really bother to write a note to be that specific, because they assumed, okay, this is made for Western audiences, most people won't care. And in this case as well, it's more about appearance, about making something look kind of like it could be related to Thailand or other places of Southeast Asia without really giving credit to those places. So we recognize Jurian, we recognize the clothing, the set, we recognize that temples could be from Cambodia. We recognize these delicious foods that film is very good at portraying. We have tom yum and rice. But of course, in the film, all of these foods have different names because we are in an exotic land. This is making me hungry. Then you also have these insides of these palaces that very much resemble the architecture that you would see in many temples across Southeast Asia. But we come back to this idea that it's really difficult to say that this film is helping understand Southeast Asia better, because we're talking about an imaginary land of Kumanja that portrays this very diverse geographical and cultural area in these broad brushstrokes. And so it doesn't really help us know the people who live there, and also it doesn't help us understand these very distinct cultures. My question is, why is this story not set within Khmer Empire and in 11th or 12th century? Would this have taken away from the story and plot line? I don't think that it would. I think that you could basically tell the same story. Design, of course, would have to be modified. Things would have to get a little bit more accurate. But the problem is that it's more likely that Cambodian princess is less marketable than Southeast Asian princess. And also by setting this narrative within an imaginary land, you kind of push away the criticism for not being specific and for not engaging with culture enough. And so I think that creating Kumanja is really clever way to kind of push away that kind of discourse. And also in case of countries that tend to have strict import rules, you avoid their censorship laws and potentially sensitive topics by putting it within this genre of fantasy. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bruno, for the presentation. You raised several interesting points, actually, especially in noting that sometimes Westerners tend to see Asia through the Orientalist perspective, and on how using a fictional country is a clever way to avoid import restrictions and such. But we will discuss about this further in the question and answer session. We've reached the discussion session, and for participants who have questions or comments to be read off, you may type your questions and comments in the chat box, or you may raise your hand and unmute your mic. Maybe I will start with my own personal question. So my question to all the speakers is the loose or rather not culturally exact depiction in the Raya movie is justifiable simply because it is a fantasy movie made by Disney? I hope my question is clear. Maybe I can ask the answer first from Diana.
Hi, sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Okay, sorry. My question was, is the loose or rather not culturally exact representation or depiction in Raya movie is justifiable simply because it's a fantasy movie?
From my perspective, I find it acceptable in that many of the things that are being showcased, as I said just now, many of the commonalities are being showcased, something that many of the 10 countries can find something similar in that. So being it a fictional setting, and bear in mind, my background is is international relations, politics, peace and war, not specifically literature. I find it acceptable, this sort of general kind of generalization for the region.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you, Diana. Maybe I can have an answer from Debbie.
Well, I think Disney's following a classic Hollywood tradition of being non-specific for any culture other than the West, as Bruno mentioned, being Europe and the United States and Canada, perhaps. Films that are made about Africa are like Africa as if it's all one place. You know, Asia is like all one place. So I don't think that they were intentionally trying to dilute culture. I think they are operating in a tradition where specificity just doesn't occur, particularly in the expectation for a Western audience, like the language notes that Bruno hinted at. Western audiences wouldn't know, you know, Malaysian writing from Chinese writing. That's just kind of the reality, sadly. And I think they will continue to do this, Hollywood just in general, and Disney specifically too. I thought it was interesting, the dragons. Bruno said they look like My Little Pony. I thought they looked like Care Bears. So I thought, you know, and that's another way that they take a specifically cultural icon and westernize it. And I thought there was a lot in this film that was westernized. So yeah, I think it's part of the machine of Western media, particularly Hollywood.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So if Diana feels that the depiction is justifiable, Debbie also highlights the more realistic approach on how this generalizing approach is already used by the Westerners for far too long. So maybe I can have another answer from Mr. Satya.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a bit moderate here as a first step. I think Raya is a good start. Knowing Southeast Asia is kind of underrepresented, and at least from this movie, the viewers or the audience, the global audience, probably have knowledge about Southeast Asian, even though it's kind of more general and somehow maybe misleading to some aspect, just like other person said. So probably as a good start here, but we need to probably giving a comparison about the diversity of the Southeast Asian like we have so many diversity, but not in a bad way, but just trying to reduce the idea of homogenizing of the ethnicities here. So so for me, yeah, it's a good start, but maybe Disney or other films company trying to make like more research and more a way to represent the uniqueness of Southeast Asian countries here. So I hope that one of Disney producer can hear this, and maybe we can have a series of the heroes from Southeast Asian countries. It's just like the Marvel movies with each heroes represent their own world. Yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't have the money for the making films. Thank you. I think that's all already.
Okay, Mr. Satria. But that's actually a valid and interesting point. How I think critics on Raya are raised not only to highlight the mistakes on Raya, but also to create a better, not only in the Southeast Asian as well, but maybe other regions, highlighting the importance of maybe more research on cultures and culturally sensitive approach. Maybe I can have the answer from Bruno.
I don't think that Disney as a multinational corporation owes us to anything. I mean, their main goal is to make money. They have their own ways of accomplishing that. They're not educational tool, but by the same token, I feel like this was a missed opportunity because, for example, when you look at Coco, the treatment of Mexico, I think it was a lot more detailed. It was a lot more nuanced, and it was wrapped in this heartwarming story that highlighted some very unique aspects of Mexico. And I think that this could have been a really good approach in case of Raya as well.
Okay, so
it could have been educational and also profitable at the same time.
Yeah, sure. You made quite a similar point to Debbie on how Disney is just doing Disney, targeting the market as wide as possible. But you also raised another interesting point on how Coco actually did that while still being culturally sensitive. There is another question from a participant that kind of relates to the things we discussed before from Jose Bernabe Macbanua. The question is, to all the presenters, would you say that Disney took a shotgun approach in targeting the Southeast Asian market or viewers by picking various Southeast Asian elements and combining them in one film? And would you consider this as a good thing or a bad thing? So maybe I can first ask to Bruno.
By a shotgun approach, you mean just kind of trying to vaguely hit the market? I'm not sure what the shotgun approach.
Maybe Jose, can you open your mic or maybe type in the chat box? But from my understanding, I think by shotgun approach, it means targeting the market sporadically and not focusing on just one specific country. Yes.
Right. I think I've mentioned this before, but yes, I think that's what they did. They just thought that it would be, in my opinion, I think they figured that it would be more profitable to portray this whole region, and so that people of that region feel like they're being represented in a way and become more curious about what this film is about, rather than just picking one country in Southeast Asia and saying this princess is from this particular country. So from a marketing standpoint, it seems like a more logical choice.
Yes, true. This is also similar to your answer for the first question. Maybe I can ask the opinion from Mr. Satria.
Yeah, I agree. It's good thing or bad thing is depend on which side we're talking about. If we talking about the marketing and economics aspect, it's very common to to take everything as long as they get the money. But however, if about cultural studies in here and also the way we understand other cultures here, well, I will not saying it's a bad thing, but I don't think it's we can choose a better stuff, you know, like trying to do research on specific cultures and things. So yeah, that's my answer. So it depends and which perspective we can take. Thank you, Rani.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Satria. Miss Diana, maybe your answer?
Yes, I agree. Good or bad, it depends on which perspective you're looking in. But let us not forget that Southeast Asia has many historical influences, not just from within the natives of this land, but also from colonizers. That's why you probably see influences from Arabic influences, or even in words and even in food. So I guess from the standpoint of the writers, out of the 10 countries, which one would you showcase? Out of the 10, which one would be highlighted without offending the rest and saying, you know what, actually, that songket is really ours and it's not yours. So, you know, this argument of what element belongs to who is kind of tricky, especially in Southeast Asia, because of this long history of migration and interaction between everybody and the influences from outside and the episode of colonization. So that's one, from a Disney point of view or from a capitalist point of view, I guess that's one of the reasons probably they just did a one size fits all in terms of Southeast Asia representation. What they should have focused on was to differentiate Southeast Asia from East Asia, or from, you know, India and Pakistan and whatnot, to highlight this region as unique in that setting. And their focus on unity, for me, was something that something that can be put on all countries and can be generalized. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Last but not least, Debbie, your answer maybe.
I think that the film, the very fact that it is marketed as a representation of East Asia is itself a milestone for Disney. And I think they missed an opportunity though. They have 5 different, there's the heart, fang, spine, talon, and tail. And if that's 5, if there are 10 East Asian countries, or Southeast Asian countries, they could have each, like heart could have used 2 countries together, highlighted specific things from 2, you know, each land could have highlighted specific things from 2 countries to get all 10. And it could have been, they could have been a little more specific, I think, with the representation rather than they were. So to me, they missed an opportunity. To speak to Diana's comment about the unity theme, what I found ironic, and I was kind of waiting to see if any of the others had noticed this, each time Raya stopped at a land to get part of the dragon gem, she picked up a person who became a help and a friend. And so the unity was actually in the quest. They became unified as a representation, a representative from each of the lands helps her to pull it all together. So, and I think that's a subtle message in the film that is probably not as prominent as the whole of lands. Let's unify everyone. But you know, for Disney, I think this is a major accomplishment for them for a cultural film. So I think it's done its work, and hopefully, as Satria has said, it will spark more films that focus more specifically on cultures, East Asian cultures, Southeast Asian cultures.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I think we can all agree that as this is a kind of a smarter approach on targeting a wider approach, but also a missed opportunity for introducing a more specific cultures in the region itself. And there's another question from the participant connecting to this because there's been an ongoing debate on the depiction of Asian culture, how Raya actually contains lots of Eastern Asia cultures as well, when in fact it should have represented Southeast Asia. So the question is from Alfisa Dinda, and she would like to ask about the signs or evidence of a quote-unquote Asianness that appears in the film Raya and the Last Dragon, and what value or meaning do we get regarding the Asianness or maybe the Asian identity that is presented by the Unity in the movie itself. Maybe I can ask the answer from Debbie first.
I actually am going to kind of pick up on a point Bruno made about the eyes. Disney's very famous for depicting innocence as great big round eyes, and the way that they contrast Raya and Namiri is just so stark and sets up and reinforces a kind of Orientalist view of the otherness of Asian. All Asian, to use Satria's term, homogenized. I think, to me, and this is just how I read this, I did not really see a validation or a kind of prominence of a specifically Asian identity, which I think is one of the problems of the film. I think the things that are the most and I'm going to use the word stereotypically for Western audiences that are Asian are depicted as not good, right? So it's kind of a contradiction again in the depiction, is how I would see it.
Okay, thank you, Debbie, for your answer. Maybe Bruno?
Sorry, I was muted. When I was listening to Satria saying about how he doesn't really see himself as a person who belongs to Southeast Asian region, he doesn't really recognize his place in this film. I think that's something that's very understandable, because we've all mentioned that the film references many elements of different Southeast Asian cultures, but is there such a thing as a unified Southeast Asian identity? And is it really possible to capture that in a film that is set in a mythical, fantastical place and that's just inspired by this very diverse part of the world? I think that's difficult to say. Although I do want to say that I agree with Diana when she mentioned how cultures don't really exist in isolation, and how different cultural elements really bleed into each other, how countries affect one another. So maybe it's not always most fruitful to look for details or exact origins of certain features, but at the same time, there are very specific elements that are associated with Southeast Asian countries, and just looking at this film, I think it's hard to really hold on to anything and say, oh, this is very characteristic for this or that country and representative of a certain identity.
Okay, thank you, Bruno, for your take on the question. Maybe next is Diana.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll bring it back to the earlier point that I made before I started, in that it tries to depict, the film tries to depict a region as Southeast Asia. And yet the way we discuss it is that we try to pick an individual country to represent it. But yet the film was supposed to portray the region as a whole. So this is the irony that I see, or that I witnessed in that, in one sense, Disney is trying to give a more general perception of what this region would be like. But at the other side, the audiences from this particular region are just looking for that one element to say that it's exactly about my country. So this possessiveness in terms of where my identity of my culture is situated in that film is very ironic to me. And I don't think that it should be on the burden of Disney, an outsider, to portray it. It should have been portrayed by within this own region. And the writers, one is Asian American anyway, so she probably wouldn't give she probably wouldn't be in tune into the elements within this place. But that is my take on it. What exactly is Southeast Asian? If you want to nitpick on it, what exactly is an element of being Southeast Asian? And how would this element be different between member states of this region? That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Last but not least, Mr. Satya.
Yes, Asianness is kind of a big term from this because, again, Asianness is we put as a of elements of the identities, and we can find it in this film, you know, by small, little bit banal elements like we heard about tuk-tuk and then durian, and maybe, well, the martial arts, even though we don't really understand what is that martial art, but we consider it as a Southeast Asian regions. This banal symbol is good way to start, and you know, like Dana said, is part to introduce Southeast Asian regions. Despite the fact that Southeast Asian is underrepresented in this we're talking about Disney World, yeah. It's not kind of film from Southeast Asia, but Disney World. In Disney World, Southeast Asia is underrepresented. Again, to understand this is an element of Asianness, it's a good start. It's a good start. But and then after that, so we need to, like, for example, we can see the idea of representing Japan or as a country, not as a culture, and also probably China or Chinese as a ethnicity. The details of the elements is normally like in general. So after this, perhaps there will be an ideas, for example, from other country or from Disney World to see what is the unique from each country in this region. So and then will be avoid the misleading, for example, oh, tuk-tuk, I can find tuk-tuk in Indonesia, for example, and said, oh no, tuk-tuk is from Thailand. Well, but you say it is Southeast Asian. You see, like the banal elements will somehow it kind of lead us to different perspective. But again, as Shanas in the beginning, this is a good start for Raya, and we understand, oh, this is an Asian region. And then after that, I'm look forward for Disney perhaps to create a series of movies. This will be great. Or maybe just trying to make a non-banal for explaining from in one narrative, these characters is from like Thailand with their own uniqueness in the same, you know, the same story with another country representative. Even though I read in the chat, this is a big job, a big task. But hey, dreaming is good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rani.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Satria. It's interesting to see that even the speakers themselves are actually divided on seeing this as problematic or not, because I feel like it's also not, the problem does not only lies on the Raya movie itself, but also on rather the lack of identity within the Asian region itself. As Bruno mentioned before, Asian do not really have one specific identity, because the region itself has various countries with very various cultures. And Diana also raised an interesting point on how the movie was supposed to be a representation of the region, and in the debates kind of circling around how it should be more specifically catered to one country or one specific culture. And this relates to another question by Mega Purnaningrum, the participant from FISIP UNAIR. Mega asked, in your opinion, is this film trying to undermine Southeast Asian culture by mixing the culture according to the authors or the movie maker's perspective? Since we all know that Southeast Asian culture is not that simple. Maybe I can first ask to Mr. Satria.
Yes, I think undermining is kind of a little bit hard word for hard term, but maybe this is just, you know, as I say, first start to walk is kind of hard, you know. So to compile all the elements of South Asian cultures is a big job indeed. So I don't think the film is trying to undermining the culture or the character of the culture, but in a way trying to cope with all the issues, all the elements. So they have to pick one or thing or one another to represent it in the films or in the narrative. But yeah, but it's not. I'm trying to be a little bit optimistic here. It's not about undermining. Probably it's about to cope with the industrial needs to, you know, the marketing things because the film targeting Southeast Asian, but also trying to raise up the awareness of South Asian regions to global world. So maybe you need more work in next films perhaps to learn from this film and then to understand and trying to be more specific for the cultures. So but yeah, I can't blame you if you say undermining, because that's what we read from the film for the presentation of the films, from one particular films. And then if it happens and then maybe need more discussion, need more elaboration, work with altogether audience with the filmmaker as well to produce more film that giving more spaces in specific to in particular cultures in Southeast Asia regions. So yeah, I think that's my answers, Rani.
Thank you, Ms. Satria. Ms. Diana, may I ask for your answer?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Satria. I think undermine is a strong word. I think it was not the intention to water down any of the characteristics of Asianness in this movie. But I think the writers themselves were aware of the complexity that exists within each community. I mean, for Malaysia itself, it's not just made up of Malays and Chinese and Indians. There's about 50 ethnic groups here, just in Sabah alone. So then how would that, how could writers adequately portray this kind of diversity in a 1.5-hour film while still attracting, keeping your attention span and not drowning us with, overloading us with too much information. I think it wasn't the intention, but I mean, as we've all said, they could have done better for sure. But this was the stepping stone, the first start to see and how to do it better after this. Thanks.
Now, Mr. Bruno, may I ask your answer?
I think this film is a step in the right direction. I mean, last year we wouldn't be able to have these kinds of discussions because there wasn't a Southeast Asian princess, and now we have one. And yes, it's flawed. There are many things that could have been made better. It could have been more specific, more inclusive. But despite these flaws, I think it's good because it's making us talk about it. And with time, I think that the awareness of changing these representations will reach Disney eventually, and will probably enter other films that they make.
Okay, thank you, Bruno. Last but not least, Debbie, your answer, please.
I also think undermine is too strong a word. I think that the developers and the writers thought they were probably depicting Southeast Asian culture pretty fairly, rightly or wrongly so. And it's a first step. And Bruno's right, we couldn't have talked about this last year. There was no Southeast Asian princess, and now we have one. I think too, what it brings to the surface is a hunger, and rightly so, to see themselves on screen, in stories, in film, whether it is Hollywood film or a Southeast Asian produced film. People seem to want very much to see themselves and their stories and their culture represented and depicted on screen. So hopefully this is a step in that direction.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So all of our speakers agree on how Raya is, maybe a flawed start, but it's actually a gate opener on further movies in the future, whether it's about Southeast Asian in general or about one specific country, or maybe more inclusive representation, and how the movie triggers this kind of discussion, which is a great thing. And this relates to some questions from the speakers on development of Southeast Asian culture in Western films. So Mutli Yap asked, how do we promote or sustain Southeast Asian culture in Western films? There are also other similar questions. Oh yeah, it's from Kevin Bautista. May I ask questions for suggestions on how to improve representation, especially in Western countries, for any studio in Hollywood in addition to Disney? So yeah, the question is on what are your takes or maybe your solutions or approach alternatives for Western movie makers or studios to create a better representative for Southeast Asian culture or maybe other cultures out there. Maybe first to Debbie.
What is the question?
The question is, what are your alternatives or maybe your solutions for Western movie makers to create a better representative for Southeast Asian culture or maybe other culture?
Well, I think it's to get over their fear of doing that, and this belief that they won't make money if they do. And this, which is not the same thing, my example that I'm going to use, but it proves the point. Hollywood for years believed they couldn't market, a Black cast film anywhere but the United States, and they wouldn't make any money. They made After Earth, which was kind of a flop here, but did really well around the world, and defied that kind of belief. And I think once a filmmaker decides to be culturally specific and take that plunge, I think it would open a lot of doors for other directors and other producers to do the same thing. I think it's a needed step in filmmaking to be more culturally specific. It only takes one director to be that brave to do that.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. May I ask the answer from Bruno?
I think that Disney did a pretty good job with hiring a creative team that has roots in Asia. I think that next step would be to really specifically say, okay, this is the film, we're setting it in this specific country, and try to get people from that specific country. And I agree with Debbie that it also, there's a need for a certain amount of bravery, to kind of be brave and to break the mold of representation, to stay away from these stereotypes and give these authors permission to really represent themselves in the way that they feel is authentic and representative of them, without necessarily trying to appease global markets everywhere by projecting what everybody just expects to get from certain part of the world or region. Because it is marketable, it can be a big source of profit, breaking these kinds of stereotypes.
Okay, thank you, Bruno. Maybe next from Diana.
Yeah, I agree with both in that there just needs to be producers or writers who are braver, who are willing to focus on that one particular country or one particular story, so that these elements can be highlighted for, and there's no confusion that comes out after that. I mean, they need to pull away from the fear that, oh, this issue will not bring in money or that issue will not bring in attraction. I think this comes with more and more attempts of producing Southeast Asian countries and not just stopping at Raya and that's it. I guess we need a Raya 2, Raya and a friend in Indonesia, or Raya and a friend in Philippines to get the ball rolling after this. But yeah, definitely more representation or more attempts by producers and writers to get the stories out is definitely something. Thanks.
Diana, last but not least, Mrs. Satria.
Yeah, again, it's a good start, a good start, very good start, and then we just, I mean, if we are talking about the movie, and then it's a good thing, you know, because we watched the movie. That's what they expect, isn't it? We watched the movie and everyone talking about it and becoming viral, and everyone what they're talking about. Just watch the movie first, and then you know it's kind of becoming a marketing viral, and it's good for business. And then when I hope when Disney producer hear about this, and when, okay, probably we'll need to make another movie about, you know, like, you know, going to Thailand or going to Indonesia, going to Malaysia in the case. So, and then I hope when they decide to do that, they will do more research. And the Southeast Asian as a region will also introduce the countries within the regions in particular. And this will be a good one, you know. I remember when Moana being released, you know, like everyone, okay, and then we understand about the Islander, you know, the Pacific Islander representative here is also being underrepresented in Disney World. So I think we have a similar, you know, ideas here with our friend in Pacific. You know. So after this, perhaps as a business company or entitled company, Disney will trying to figure out how to reach more audience from this, you know, from these discourses about the films.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Satria. From the answers, I feel like we can take away 2 points. The first one is the importance of research, more inclusive research, which is interesting because Kevin Bautista, one of the participants, commented on how the Raya team did not even reach Philippines for their field research, and they only went to several countries such as Thailand, Laos, and Indonesia. And if that is true, then I think that showcases the importance of more inclusive research for further movies, whether it's Southeast Asian or not, but also on the importance of bravery from movie makers on how they should step away from the need to chasing the market and the money. One example I can give, which is not Southeast Asian, but still in the Asian region, is Bong Joon-ho and the Parasite movie. His bravery in creating, you know, Parasite and not even changing this subtitles or something. And one of the most famous quotes he said was, "Once you overcome the 1-inch barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to more amazing films," which I think showcases how bravery should not only appear on the movie makers, but also on the watchers and the viewers itself. I mean, you should dare yourself to watch more, you know, inclusive and broader range of movies to push movie makers to create more inclusive representation. Last but not least, I think we will have around 2 more questions. This is from Saiful Muhajir Abdullah. If we already discussed about identities and such, Saiful asked about the trust value in the movie. So can trust be easily gained? And what is your opinion on this, especially noting the Raya and the Namari dynamic? Maybe from Debbie first.
And the question is if trust can be as easily gained as the film shows? Is that the question?
Yes, yes.
No. I think the film has a problem with trust throughout, and it's only at the end and kind of in a dramatic fashion, all of a sudden we all trust each other. And you know, it's a typically Hollywood stereotyped kind of happy ending. I don't think trust comes that easily. However, I would again highlight the trust that Raya and each of the companions build when they meet. They distrust each other, you know, what are you going to do? And then they kind of become friends and, hey, we could use you. And they build, and to me, that is where the trust is built in the film. Not so much at the end. I found it, for me, I did not believe Namiri just all of a sudden decided to sacrifice herself. It was a little unbelievable for as adamant as she was up until literally the very end, that I want this stone and I'm not giving it to anybody kind of thing. So for me, that was a little bit unbelievable. But if you look at the subtext of how through the journey and how they learn to trust each other to get to that end, I think that is a more realistic depiction of gaining trust. So it's like there's these 2 levels of the trust depiction. One is kind of false and the other is a little more realistic. So that's how I would see that.
Okay, thank you. Diana, your answer maybe?
Yeah, trust or unity without any kind of threat is not as easily attained. And I think what that the movie shows is that the trust was slightly easier to give when they were fighting against a common enemy. So exactly what Debbie said, Namiri suddenly going 360 and saying, yeah, I trust you and I'll give myself up to you. That was a little bit too much to take. But in the other sense, because there was this common bigger threat to the whole ethnicity that made trust possible for that movie. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Diana. Mr. Satria?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the audience of this movie is to the kids, the children, and I'm trying probably the creator of the film is trying to put anything can happen if you in their position, you know. Even though we say, oh, okay, really, but but still for the kids, that's good, you know. Giving the hope, giving the dreams, and giving well, in some condition, in some situation, miracle happens, and then that's probably unbelievable, and that's probably is as an adult sometimes we put ourselves, you know, beyond the childhood characters. But I think the film trying to put you know, all the dreams and hopes to the children viewers to say, if only you have the situation, maybe you would think that way, you know. It's they're trying to put the ideas to the children in that particular issues. So trust, for example, in this case, that, well, sometimes because we are in the reality now, I'm not sure about that, but in the narrative, they're trying to put the trust is part of the dreams and hopes for the children, so they can, you know, together with the journey and win the journey together with the friends. If we are an adult, probably we will expect a plot twist, for example, to make the films becoming another sequel, for example. So yeah, but yeah, but I think that's my answers for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Satria. Lastly, Mr. Bruno.
I think that film's portrayal of trust is a little bit contradictory in that trust is what really gets Raya and her kingdom in trouble. She befriends this girl, Namari, and Namari schemes to take away the magical pearl. And then she keeps trusting Namari, even though Namari tricks her again. And I'm not sure what kind of message the Disney is trying to send to children, but I feel it's a little bit strange. On one hand, you're telling children, be naive, keep trusting people who keep fooling you. And then in the end, the whole thing is saved because again, she trusted. So I'm not sure what Disney creators are trying to say. And maybe I'm a little bit too cynical, but I feel that traditional fairy tales, such as Grimm tales, they tended to teach children very specific morality stories. For example, you shouldn't go into the forest, don't talk to strangers, and teaches them some kinds of lessons. Whereas in this one, I'm not sure what they're trying to say. Should we trust people who are consistently harming us or not? Is this something that we would want to teach our children? Would we want them to keep going back to people who are showing them that they are not trustworthy? And also at the end of the film, again, maybe I'm too cynical, but at one moment I thought that the resolution with everything turning out well was happening after everybody has died. Because we see everybody turn into stone. Basically, we see them dead and suddenly, voila, everybody's together. Everything is really happy, which never happens in real life. So my mind went into this really dark place for a moment, but then I assured myself, this is not so because this is a Disney cartoon and this is all real.
Okay, thank you, Bruno. Yeah, I think all the speakers agree on how the trust value depiction in the movie is kind of flawed and contradictory. I think even all the participants maybe can agree that we should remember this movie as a movie that is catered to children. And maybe the one takeaway that we can take is one point mentioned by Debbie on how the trust is depicted also by how Raya built her trust to her friends through a very long process. So it's not necessarily easily gained through an instant process like you see on how she built her trust with Namari, but rather on a longer process. So yeah, and that concluded our discussion for today. I personally am very honored to be here and very intrigued on the discussion as well. Maybe the last thing that I can say is, again, Raya is a very good movie. It's entertaining. It's very pretty visually, and we can all agree, I think, that it is a good gate opener for Southeast Asian representation in the Hollywood. But we also have to highlight its importance on how it intrigues more discussion on how we should create a more exact and correct analysis and representation to culturally sensitive values by Western movie makers. So I would like to say thank you to Diana Peters, to Debbie Olsen, to Bruno Lovrick, and to Satria Wibawa for spending your time with us today and sharing your perspectives on this movie and discussing it with us. It was so much fun. Thank you so much. And we're signing it back off to Icha as the host. Thank you. Diana, Debbie, Bruno, Satria, is there anything you want to add?
I just wanted to say that it was a pleasure listening to all of you today and meeting you and all the speakers.
Yes, likewise. It was definitely a fun session. Not something that I'm used to in my classroom, but definitely an eye-opener from all angles. Thank you very much.
Yes, I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed meeting you all, and the discussion was wonderful. So I'm very happy. Thank you all.
And we can add next event with watching together the movie we watch, and then the ambience we missed for the last 2 years. And then we watch the movie by ourselves, and then talking about it in some event. That's good, but we need to do more for next event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diana Peters, Debbie Olsen, Brunovic, and Sophia Robo once again. We're signing off. Thank you so much, everyone. We're heading it back to Icha as the host. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for the very insightful and very fruitful Q&A session, and thank you very much for the speakers who have answered all of the questions and given us so many perspective regarding on this movie Raya and the Southeast Asian culture representation. And also thank you for the participants who has been active in the Q&A section. And okay, so we have a list of some people who have quite active in this Q&A session, and these people I will send it to the chat box. These are the people who have won the souvenirs. So here it is. So for the winners, please send your contact information to our email at international@fisip.unair.ac.id in order for us to further process your souvenirs. And congratulations again. And again, but now before we close the session for today, we would like to remind you carefully to fill out the attendance forms that we have distributed to you guys earlier. And for the speakers, we will email your certificates to your respective emails. Before we close our session, the committee would like to take documentation for this session. So please, participants, if you are able to, open your cameras for us to be able to take a picture of you guys. Okay, we will wait. Okay, please participants, open your camera. There are only one slide who's actually opening their cameras, and the rest of the slides and the rest of the slides hasn't been opened the camera yet. So please, we urge you to open the camera so that we can take a photo session.
What do you mean open the camera?
Sorry.
I have the video.
Turn on the camera. Sorry. We usually in our classroom we usually open the camera. It's grammatically incorrect, so very sorry about that.
Okay.
So, turn on the camera. Sorry.
That's a new culture, Russell.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Open mic.
Yeah, it's a new phrases here since we use Zoom a lot in our lecturing sessions. All right, participants, turn on your cameras, please.
So is it open? Is my camera on?
Yes.
Okay.
We can see
then I'm good.
It's almost late midnight and almost morning from Bruno, almost late midnight from Debbie.
Okay. All right then. Sorry about that. Maybe if the participants are really most of the participants are maybe at night, so they are probably cannot open their cameras or have other issues. Maybe we could take this picture only for the 2 slides. Okay, get ready. So for the first slide, 1, 2, 3. Okay, wait a second. I will send it to. For the second slide, 1, 2. Okay, for the third slide, just to be sure. 1, 2. For the fourth slide. 1, 2, 3. For the fifth and the last one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that is all for our photo session. Thank you very much for turning on your cameras. All right, it seems like we have come to an end to our discussion for today. Thank you again very much for the wonderful and amazing speakers who have so generously shared their knowledge and discuss regarding this movie. And thank you again for the participants who have attended and was active in the discussion. We sincerely hope that the discussion for today will give you some fruitful information that can be useful for the incoming future. And I apologize for any wrongdoings or things that I personally may have offended you or the committee may have offended you. So my name is Icha and I will take my leave for today. Thank you again and see you on the next AMUSE discussion session. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dedi. Thank you, Diana. Thank you,
Thank
Bruno.
you, everyone.
Nice to see you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Makasih Mas Heri. Stay dulu ya, Rani sama Ica.
Ya, Mas.
Mungkin bisa bantu di Mas Agung mau stay dulu atau gimana Mas Agung?